for a while, probably, right? Okay, anyways, this is Footsteps of Jesus. Sweetly, Lord, have we heard thee calling, come follow me. And we see where thy footprints falling lead us to thee. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus wherever they go. Though they lead o'er the cold, dark mountains, seeking his sheep, or along by Shalom fountains, helping the weak. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus wherever they go. If they lead though the temple holy, preaching a word, or in homes of the poor and lowly, serving the Lord. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus wherever they go. Then at last when on high he sees us, our journey done, we will rest where the steps of Jesus stand at his throne. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus wherever they go.
Amen. That's a sermon in itself this morning, wasn't it? Don't need me to preach. Those are what you call scriptural gospel songs. Brother Randy, the janitor, told me here a while back, he said, I'd like to go to one missionary Baptist song service one time. And I said, well, come there in a couple of weeks over there. And I said, you'll hear one. And I thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Well, over the years, I've taught everything under the sun. I try to educate my people. And Brother Ray, you were in my, how long ago was it? 30, over 35 years ago. I want you to come up here and tell a little story in just a minute that'll illustrate this. Come right up here. You're it. I want you to come up here and tell a little story. You know, when I preach, I throw a little Western civilization, political science in it, and I'm not talking about politics, Republican or Democrat. I'm talking about political science, period. Zilch. I mean, right down the middle, what really is happening. I teach a little economics of the history of America and whatever. And I've been doing this for a long time. You remember when I was teaching in seminary, Western Civilization, Political Science. And so many years ago, and he sat in my classes. Well, come up here and tell a little bit about that story, Brother Ray, just as an introduction. About that woman you want to working on her house. He's a contractor. This tell this little story. This is a long time ago.
This is going to make me famous again?
Yeah, you're famous again.
Well, you know, when I was going to Brother Jim Phillips' classes, of course, he educated me in more ways than one. Okay, my education wasn't very strong, but we were going to Western civilization, studying about all the three races, the three sons of Shem, Mongoloid, Congoloid, Negroids, and all them. That's the English version of it. You got the Shemites, the Japhethites, and what was the other one? I forgot. Shemites. Well, yeah, this lady, she's going to college, you know, and learning about this same thing that I was learning in church. You know, we got to talking about this and then that. And we got talking about the cultures and how they all separated, you know, the different nationalities and the languages and how they spread, but basically by three sons that repopulated the earth. And then we talked a lot about that and all the in-betweens. And she says, he said, not very many Mexicans know that or understand that. I said, where did you learn that stuff? I said, well, I learned that in church. He says, church? I said, yeah, we're taking Western civilization. He said, you got to be kidding me. I pay a lot of money to go to college to learn what you have just told me right now and stuff that I already know, and I'm really surprised, and you didn't even pay a penny to learn this. No, I go to church, and Brother Jim Phillips said, he teaches Western civilization. He said, well, I'm really impressed, young fellow. And he says, well, so am I, you know. I didn't know I had that going. Well, that was kind of an interesting story. I just told him the other day about that. I don't think I ever told him about that one time, but anyhow, that's what you get when you learn with Brother Jim.
Well, if you grab some of this stuff as we run by through history, through different things that have happened in American history or world history, grab it and stick it under your hat. It might do you some good someday. It might be a witnessing tool for you also. Now we're going to study today about the kingdom of darkness. In 19th chapter of the book of Acts, we went there last week, but I did not finish the story. So we're going to go back there in 19th chapter of Acts. We're going to rehearse just a little bit about it, 19:11 through 20. And what it said there in summary was the Apostle Paul was casting out demons, and they were even taking napkins that he had touched and prayed over and was sending them out, and demons were leaving these people. I want you to understand one thing, that demons are real. The spiritual world is tangible, whether you can see it or not. It touches you, and it affects you in every day of your life. In Revelation, the 22nd chapter, Revelation chapter 22. Now, I want to review something before we do that reading. Remember, last week we talked about different forms of spiritual fornication. Okay? How you can mess with the demon world that's really real. Divination with signs and omens and forbidden sciences, and we're going to talk about that because I'm going to go back to the book of Enoch. I'm going to read you when these things were introduced into the human race. All right? Now, the book of Enoch is one of the oldest books in the world. As far as we know, Enoch was the seventh man from Adam. He wrote a lot of things down. How much of the book of Enoch is inspired, I do not know, nor does anybody else, because they've never studied it enough. People are afraid to go out in those sciences. I believe in educating people. I believe in understanding everything. I've read the Apocrypha. I've ever read every extra biblical source there is on the person of Jesus Christ. I've read the Mishnah, the Talmud, the oral law, all of this, the Quran, and Hadith and Ahadith, the Sunnahs, whatever. I've read these things, and I've studied other religions from their points of view. And Brother Ray used to see my library when it was a giant library. It was a giant library. And I had all of their own sources. And I still do. I have a lot of the sources. You read what they say. A lot of false religions were very much inspired from the kingdom of darkness. Divination, signs, omens, forbidden sciences. Number 2, spells, incantations, drugs, pharmakia, as it says in the book of Revelation, and alcohol even. And then number 3, direct intellectual communication and cooperation with demonic forces. Okay? Direct, intelligent communication and cooperation with demonic forces. This, and what witches were known as is what? This is a test. What are witches known as? Mistresses of a demon. A witch is known as a mistress of a demon. All right? Now we have sources of information about these things. Number one, the Bible. And we're going to go through those things today. The Bible is a historical resource. It's historical. The Bible, history itself, and then physical evidence of what these things cause. What spiritual forces, what effects do they have in history, these spiritual forces? We have, in intellectual communication, we have seances. Brother Ray told me about a seance that you were in one time. It was real, wasn't it, brother? Scared the daylights out of you. He was innocently walked into this situation and quickly evacuated the situation. Zip, out, gone. All right? Talking about the kingdom of darkness. Divinations, signs, omens, astrology, forbidden sciences, spells, incantations, drugs, pharmakia, direct intellectual communication with demonic forces, which is real. The Bible is our source, history is a source, and physical evidence is our source of these things. Now go to the book of Revelation real quick. The book of Revelation 22. Revelation chapter 22. And verse number 14. Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter into by the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs. Now the word dogs there is male homosexual prostitutes. Do you get that? It's not talking about canines. A dog is one of the greatest gifts that God ever gave to man. These dogs here are male homosexual prostitutes. And drug abusers. That's the word pharmakia. Our word pharmacy comes from that Greek word. And immoral, and that word immoral person's there, that is female prostitutes. It's got them both. It's got the males and the female prostitutes both. And murderers and idolaters. Idolatry. What kind of idolatry do you have? You know that false religion is idolatry? False religion is also idolatry. And everyone who loves and practices lawlessness and lying. Now let's go to the book of Jude. That's right next to the book of Revelation, isn't it? Jude. Let's see what Jude has got to say about this. Jude, who was Jude? Who's Jude? He's a half-brother of Jesus, all right? So he ought to know a little bit about this, huh? He was raised around a lot of spiritual forces, wasn't he? We talk about Peter being a dumb fisherman. Peter was not a dumb fisherman. Peter was a very educated man. By the way, he's with Jesus 3.5 years in advanced seminary studies. Did you hear that? In 3.5 years, he was with Jesus. He was one of the first apostles called out, one of the first members of the church itself. In his writings, if you study his writings, if you go back when I taught the book of 1st and 2nd Peter from Greek, you'll find him quoting the classic writers of the day, all kinds of intellectual things. All right, Jude. There's only one chapter in Jude, by the way. I did 12 sermons on the book of Jude, 12-hour sermons. In verse number 5, he said, "Now I desire to remind you, though you know all things once for all," that's hapax. He just keeps using the Greek word hapax over and over again. "That the Lord, after saving people out of the land of Egypt," and Egypt is the type of what in the Bible? The world. Thank you, Brother Mike. You got an A+ for today. "Subsequently destroyed those who did not believe." Verse number 6. Pay attention to this because we're going to go back to Genesis, the 6th chapter. "And angels," melech, angels. "Angels who did not keep their own dominion." What does dominion mean? What's a dominion?
Place of where they rule,
Where they rule, their own house. "But abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of that great day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities around them, since they, in the same way as these, indulged in gross immorality and went after strange flesh. What strange flesh did they go after?
Animals and same sex.
Animals, same sex, what else? Strange flesh.
Oh, angels.
Huh?
Fallen angels.
Angels.
Fallen angels.
What did the angels that went into Sodom, what happened to them? They were accosted by these people. Now, these were obedient angels that went there. There's fallen angels that cohabited with men and women, and they were used to this. See, they wanted to cohabit with these angels, all right. Went after strange flesh and are exhibited as an example to undergoing the punishment of eternal fire. Yet in the same manner, these men also by dreaming defile the flesh. By dreaming? Dreaming. What does dreaming mean? What is the word for being under a trance? Hypnosis. It's hypnosis in Greek, hypnose. And we find out that God hypnotizes people. God hypnotizes Adam when he put him to sleep in the garden. He hypnotized him. He fell into a deep hypnotic trance, and he took from his sides. We know that American Indians and in Egypt, they were using hypnosis as a form of anesthesia when they operated on people. Hypnose. They're dreaming. In other words, they influenced by dreams. If you go back to Muhammad's history and study Muhammad, he went up and he dreamed these things. He would go in these trances, hypnotic trances, and have these revelations. Joseph Smith had dreams and revelations. Pharaoh did. Abimelech had them. Jacob had them. Abraham had them. We see these things in history. Sometimes it is demonic, and sometimes it is of God. And what did the Bible tell us to do? Try the spirits. Try the spirits. Also by dreaming, defile the flesh, reject authority, and revile angelic magistracies. But Michael the archangel, when he disputed with the devil. Now here we have Michael the archangel. By the way, this is the only time an angel is called an archangel. We believe that there are at least 3 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Lucifer in the Bible. But Michael is identified by scriptures as an archangel. An archangel, it comes from the word arche, which means what? Head. He's a head angel. He's over a whole group. He's over an administration of the spiritual realm of God. Lucifer was over the administration of the physical realm of God. Gabriel is over the revelation, over the administration or realm of the communication realm. And in these realms are spirits which do not have form, and there are angels which have a body. I'm not talking about flesh and blood like us, but they have bodies. Bodies that are tangible. Tangible means that which may be touched. And argued about the body of Moses. Do not dare pronounce against him a railing judgment, but said, the Lord Jehovah rebuke you. But these men revile these things which they do not understand, the things which they do by instinct like unreasoning animals, but these things they are destroyed. And then look at, go on down a little bit further. In verse number 13, wild waves of the sea casting up their own shame like foam, wandering stars, for whom the blackness has been reserved. Who's these wandering stars is talking about?
The fallen angels.
The fallen angels. The blackness has been reserved forever. Wandering stars. We're not talking about stars in the heaven. We're talking about the angels, which are the... You know what Lucifer was called?
Star of the morning.
It's the star of the morning. And about this also Enoch, in the 7th generation from Adam, prophesying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy ones, to execute judgment upon all who convict all the ungodly of all their ungodly deeds, which they have done in an ungodly way. He's quoting directly from Enoch. And of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him, these are the grumblers, finding fault, following after their own lusts. They speak arrogantly, flattering people for the sake of gaining an advantage. This sounds like a political race, doesn't it? Now let's go back to 2 Peter for just a moment. 2 Peter 2, 2 Peter chapter 2. This interesting? But false prophets also arose among the people, just as they will also be false preachers among you, who secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who brought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves. And many will follow their sensuality. That word sensuality, I believe it's the Greek word aselgia. Aselgia means unbridled lust. Just let her all hang out. Just do it. Fulfill all your desires. And many will follow their sensuality. Because of them, the way of the truth will be maligned, twisted, destructed. We live in a day today of spiritual pollution. We're suffocated in spiritual pollution. I wrote something down a long time ago. We live in a gagging, suffocating world of spiritual pollution. Outside of the church and in the church. Outside of the church and in the church. And I'm talking about the church as an institution. Let's look at this a little bit further. And when he will follow sensuality, because of them, the way of the truth will be maligned, twisted, and distorted. And in their greed, they will exploit with you false words. Their judgment from long ago is not idle. Their destruction is not asleep. Peter is quoting the book of Enoch again, believe it or not. If you read the book of Enoch, you're going to find out it's this filtered all the way through and laced into all the New Testament. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, and committed them to pits of darkness. Is he talking about the same thing that the book of Jude did? See it or no? Yes or no? Yes. Reserved for judgment. They did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and with 7 others, and he brought a flood upon the world of ungodly. See there again. And if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction by reducing them to ashes, having made them an example to those who would live ungodly thereafter. And he rescued righteous Lot. Look at that righteous Lot. That was an ungodly buzzard. We wouldn't even know that man was saved unless this verse right here tells us in the New Testament. He's an ungodly buzzard. But he had a righteous soul in him, a righteous spirit that he was vexing. Righteous Lot, oppressed by the sensual conduct and unprincipled men. For by what we saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day with their lawless, ungodly, unbridled, lusting deeds. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from temptation, and to keep the unrighteous under punishment for that day of judgment, especially those who indulge in the flesh and its corrupt desires and despise authority, daring, self-willed. They do not tremble when they revile angelic magistrates. We deal with angels every day, people. We deal with the spirit world every day. Whereas angels who are greater in might and power do not bring riling judgment against them before the Lord. Again, he's quoting what? The book of Jude, which is what? Quoting the book of Enoch. But these, like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct, to be captured and killed, reviling where they have no knowledge, will in the destruction of those creatures also be destroyed. Suffering wrong as wages of doing wrong. They count it a pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are stains and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions, and as they carouse with you, having eyes full of adultery. They never cease from sin. enticing, unstable souls, having a heart trained in greed, and accursed children. That word accursed, that means damned. That means unredeemable. Unredeemable children. Children that have been raised in evil. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If you look at my life and you look at the history of my family, you'll wonder, how in the world did God grab that guy out? I was saved by grace. That's the way everybody's ever been saved in all the history of the world. I mean, a child could be born in the worst situation. You don't have to go that way. You don't have to go that way. You can, by the grace of God and by the gift of His grace, you can come out of it and serve God with all of your might. Now go back to Genesis, the 6th chapter. Genesis chapter 6. We have the Bible, history, and physical evidence as sources of the kingdom of darkness, that it does exist. We need to be aware of it because it wants to go to church. The devil is the most religious, greatest religious leader in the history of the world. If he can get people away from God and have them bow down to him in Catholicism, Islam, or whatever it is, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, I mean, they will serve God with all their might. They will. To no avail. And in the end, they go to file 13. When a child of God falls asleep in death, death is no more harmless than a Sunday afternoon nap. And a child of God, when he's close to death, he's closer to heaven than he ever will be in this life. But when a child of Satan is close to death, he's closer to hell than he ever will be any other time in the flesh. Revelation, the 6th chapter. Now it came about when men began to multiply on the faces of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God, and this is not talking about Zethline, this is talking about angels, B'nai HaElohim. These are the stars, the wandering stars. If you go to the book of Job, I won't go to all these places, but every time the word sons of God is used in the Old Testament, it's talking about what? Angels. When the word sons of God is used in the New Testament, it's talking about what? Believers, children of God. Difference between the Old and New Testament in that form. B'nai HaElohim saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves. And when it says that they took wives for themselves, it meant they kept on fornicating. Whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh, and nevertheless his days shall be 120 years. Now a lot of people take this to try to say that you can live 120 years. That's not what it's talking about here. This says that God says in 120 years, I'm going to bring judgment. Now, for 300 years, Enoch preached that judgment was coming. And he had a child by the name of Methuselah, Enoch had. And he named that boy Methuselah. What did he name him? When he's dead, it shall come to pass, or son of the dart, son of death, Methuselah. In the Old Testament, every time you come where it starts naming them off in the 9th and the 10th chapter, it says, we Yemoth, we Yemoth, we Yemoth, we Yemoth. And he died and stayed dead. And he died and stayed dead. Third person masculine singular while consecutive and perfect in Hebrew. You may not understand that, but it means that he died and stayed dead. That's what it means. You stay dead. Nevertheless, the days of man shall be 120 years, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, and they were the giants, literally, gigantes in Greek, gigantes. These are the giants of old, men of renown, men of fame, men of infamous fame. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry. He grieved. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And the Lord said, I will blot out man and that whom I have created from the faces of the land, and from man to animals to creeping things and birds of the sky. For I am sorry, or I am grieved that I have made them. And Noah found nor found grace or favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now let's go to the book of Enoch and find out what in the world's happening back there. We have an allusion to it here from the Bible, don't we? Now, this is the book of Enoch. You can find this book on discovertheword.com and discoverthewordwithdrjim.com, and you can go back and read what I just said. Genesis 6 and 1. Now, in the 7th chapter of the book of Genesis, I won't read everything, but Enoch names the angels that cohabited with women by name. All right? He names them. He named them what?
Perez.
Yeah.
Is one of them of all things.
It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days that daughters were born to them elegant and beautiful. And when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored with them, saying to each one, Come, let us select for ourselves wives from the progeny of mankind, and let us beget children. And these children are Nephilim. Nephilim means, it comes from the Hebrew word nephile, which means what, Sherry? Fallen ones. And their leader was Samayaza. And he said to them, I fear that you may perhaps be indisposed to the performance of this enterprise. Now, we have angels, we have generals, don't we? And we have captains, and we have sergeants, and we have all of these different. Now, Samaria was a leader over a certain group of angels. And that I alone shall suffer for such a grievous crime. And they said to him, We all shall swear and bind ourselves with mutual execrations, that we will not change our intention, but execute our projecting undertaking. Now, what it means is that we're not going to back out. We're going to do this, because we know that we're going to be punished by God. Then they all swore together and all bound themselves with mutual execrations. Their whole number was 200, who descended upon Ardis, which is at the top of Mount Armon. It tells you where it was. This is where they were. Now, the Bible doesn't tell a lot of this about, but now we have extra biblical evidence. Remember, we studied the Bible and we study history. This is a history book. There's another book of history book that's written by the time of Exodus and Genesis, and that is the book of Jasher. Basher. Hasafer Yashur, the book, scribe to Jasher. It's not an inspired book, it is a history book. First and Second Maccabees is in the Septuagint under the Apocrypha. First and Second Maccabees is a history book, and you would do well to read it. That mountain, therefore, they called Hermon, because they had sworn upon it and bound themselves with mutual execrations. These are the names of the chiefs: Samaja, who was their leader, Uraka Baramiel, Akabiel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Danel, Azkael, Zarake Kenyal, Aziel, Amars, Batral, Anan, Ziv, Zavibi, Sam Saviel, Ertael, Turel, Yamyael, Araziel. These were the prefects of the 200 angels, and the remainder all with them. And they took wives, each choosing for himself whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery. Revelation 22. Incantations. Dividing of roots and trees. This is the tea leaves that they divide. The tarot cards of the Jews, where they are the palm readers and all. This is all from this fallen society. The women conceiving brought forth giants, and it became impossible to feed them upon the earth. And when they turned themselves against men in order to devour them, they became cannibals. They were depopulating the earth. They began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles. Animals were not given to man to eat, nor to these creatures, but they were eating them. And fish to eat their flesh, one after another, and they drank the blood of animals and men. These are the vampires of old. The vampire stories, this is where all this comes from. This is real. Then the earth reproved the unrighteousness. And Azazel taught men to make swords. and knives, and shields and breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, and to use paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stones and every valuable select kind, and all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. Impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. They were fornicating with man and animals, all kinds of stuff. That's why God had to destroy this, because the human gene pool and the animal gene pool was polluted with these things. God created man in his image, did he not? What would be the most highly blasphemous thing that these angels could do? Corrupt that which God had created. Corrupt it. Amazarek taught all the sorcerers and dividers of roots. Armors taught the solution of sorcery. Drug abuse, drugs. Barakael taught observers of the stars, astrology. Akabiel taught signs. Temiel taught astronomy. Azaradel taught the motion of the moon. And men being destroyed cried out, and their voice reached unto heaven. And it goes on. Brother Mike.
I have two questions. One is, let me do the easy one first. He said divining, like Joseph Smith looking in the hat and looking at things and finding answers and things. But is the simple thing of looking for water underground, is that
Divining?
That's real, ain't it, or is that?
There's a lot of controversy over divining. What witching for water. You've heard of witching for water?
Yeah.
Now, I can witch for water.
I've done that before.
You've done that. It works. You can take something and look for how do you drill a water well? I drilled a water well in Fish Lake Valley, and a domestic well produced 1,000 gallons per minute. It was real good water there. But you take something, a wand or whatever. The plumbers used to, now they got all these metal finders and stuff like that. But when a plumber went out to look for your pipes in your yard, you know what he took? Two pieces of wire, and it would dip there where it was. It showed where the metal was. All right?
Other question is the gene pool of the world, humankind now polluted again already?
Now that's where we're going right now, Brother Mike. Okay, the gene pool, it says before and after the flood. Were there Nephilim after the flood? Do we have historical and biblical evidence of that? Tell me some of them. Huh? Goliath and his 4 brothers. All in the Bible. We've got a lot of these. As a matter of fact, what was the stronghold of the giants? When Joshua and Caleb went into the land of Canaan, which was given to them according to Noah, his prophecy in Genesis, the 9th chapter. Canaan was going to be a slave to them. They were going to settle in the land of Canaan. They were going to go there, and then God was going to have Jacob's descendants go down into Egypt for 400 years, and then they're going to come back in the land, and they're going to take what Canaan built, and they're going to have to kill some of these people completely and annihilate some of these races because they're polluted again. Numbers. You can go to the book. I could go read you about 50 scriptures where it talks about these giants, okay? But we don't have enough time to do that. We could take time. I've done this in my Hebrew studies from the book of Genesis in the 6th chapter. You want to go back to those where I did that, and we covered that. Christine, you were there. Sharon. Remember, divinations, signs, omens. These are the spiritual forces. Forbidden sciences, astrology, spells, incantations, drugs, and alcohol. People use drugs to get into the spirit world. The Lakota people, where I'm Lakota, I'm Brule Lakota. The Lakota people, when the white man came to this country, they looked at the white man and they saw the alcoholism and stuff was going on. They never had alcohol before. And when these Indians, when they'd give them this alcohol, they'd drink the alcohol and they thought it was a spiritual experience at first. Wow! Hey, this is great! They found out that wasn't the right spiritual influence. It was demonic spirits, so they said, don't do that. The Indian chief said, this is the urine of Satan himself. Don't drink it. When you're imbibing this, we're bringing Satan right in you. Stay away from that. That's cheap religion. That's cheap religion. Now the Apache and the Comanche, they had peyote. How many of you saw the movie Young Guns and Young Guns 2? In that movie, Fred Waite, which is my cousin, which is supposed to be Chavez in the movie, but really it was Fred Waite, and he's the boss, by the way. He was the one that went from the Pauls, McClures, and Waites into Lincoln County, and they made a partnership with John Tunstall, the Murphys, Dolans, and Bradys. These were New York Irish gangs, by the way, that came in this area. These were bad people, but they got lined up with the right people in government. And sometimes that happens, don't they? They got the police officers on their side, and so they could do all the mischief they wanted to do. And so they maliciously killed John Tunstall, violently murdered him. Fred Waite just did what my family did in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, Indian Territory, by the way. He organized the regulators and cleaned house, then went back. The partnerships were dissolved because their man that we were going to deal with, Fred Tunstall, or John Tunstall, was dead. Billy the Kid wasn't very rational, so they couldn't deal with him too much. They were going to have him have a ranch too. In the movie, they have Fred Waite, Chavez in the movie, make this peyote tea. You don't smoke peyote, by the way. You make a tea out of it and you drink it, and then it makes you vomit. And then you hallucinate, like LSD. It's like these mushrooms and things. There's all types of things that these angels taught these people to use. And this is called pharmakia. There are good drugs that you can use to heal you, and there are some that have spiritual forces aligned with them. Watch those spiritual forces. These drugs have demonic links with them. Spells, incantation, drugs, and alcohol. Direct intellectual communication with demons. You go back, King Saul, when he was all upset and everything else, and he had this mistress of a demon in his country over there. Remember the witch of Endor? The mistress of the demon. She really had a demon that she worked with. And he called her up, and God intervened on that thing, and he sent back sent back Samuel. And scared her daylights out of her, didn't it? Ah! I see one of the gods coming up. These are gods, she thought. God intervened. The Bible is the source of this spiritual darkness. History is a source, and physical evidence. Look at all the physical evidence we looked at today so far. Let's go back to the book of Ephesians. To the book of Ephesians. Well, before we go to the Ephesians, let's go to Mark. Let's go to Mark. All kinds of evidence here. Mark 5. And they came to the other side of the sea in the country of the Gadarenes. Now, we're talking about Jesus going across the Sea of Galilee in a boat. And here we have Mark looking at Jesus through the eyes of whom? Mark wrote his gospel through the eyes of who? Peter. Now, this is John Mark, and this is a guy that was a Judaizer, which took off and left Paul, and Paul got mad to him, and he went back to Jerusalem because he didn't like to rubbing elbows with these Gentile dogs. Okay, but this is the guy that wrote the Gospel of Mark. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. What do you mean, this unclean spirit?
He was demon-possessed.
Carthia. What?
He was demon-possessed.
Demon spirit. This man's demon-possessed. Paul, in the 19th chapter of the book of Acts, as we were studying last week, that set the foundation for all of this, was casting out demons one day. Immediately, a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. This is a historical account, isn't it? Now, what evidence do we have of this man even living? We're going to find out in a minute. We have evidence this man really lived. He really did live. This man was a horrible man. He had his dwelling among the tombs. He was a king of the graveyard. He was a king of the graveyard. And no one was able to bind him anymore, even with a chain, the Lord of the graveyard. And because he had often been bound with shackles and chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broke in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. I go to a self-defense class every couple of years. I have to go renew my license as a bodyguard and all that stuff. And anyway, we talked about this one guy this last time. A cop stopped him, an officer of the law stopped him. This guy was as nutty as a fruitcake, mean, full of demons. He wasn't on any drugs or alcohol. He's just bad. That cop shot him 19 times with a Colt 45 ACP. I think it was 5 times he shot him in the head, and he kept coming. He shot him through the heart 2 or 3 times. He kept coming. What forces were in him that did this? 19 times with a 45. A 45 stops you, people. 230 grain full metal jacket, or many times they've got hollow points that with grenading, they grenade when they hit. Boy, I mean, this is bad stuff. You don't live through this. 19 times he was shot. Finally, he died because he completely bled out from all. He was just shot to pieces. His leg was broke, his arm was broke, shot 5 times in the head, and still coming. This is his brother right here. This is his brother we're talking about right here. Because he had often been bound with shackles, chains, and chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles were broken in pieces, no one was strong enough to subdue him. What gave old Samson his strength? Was it his muscles? I remember when I met Brother Ray when he had big arms. That guy was this tall and that wide. Big arms and chest and muscles. Bodybuilder. But it wasn't his muscles that made him strong, was it? It's the spiritual forces behind it. When the Lord removed his spirit from Samson, he was a weakling. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Constantly, night and day, among the tombs and the mountains, he was crying out and gashing himself with stones. Demons love to dwell in human or animal flesh. They seek to dwell. Angels have form. Spirits do not have form. Spirits are unclothed entities that seek to be clothed with human or animal flesh. False religious systems, even rocks and things, idols, they have these powers in them where they come and they draw people to them. And constantly, night and day, among the tombs and all the mountains, he was crying and gashing himself with stones. And seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him. Cancer is a type of this type of thing. Cancer is a parasite, isn't it? It eats your body up. It kills its host. It kills its host. These demon spirits hurt the host that they live in. Verse number 7, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." For he had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." That's what Jesus did. And he was asking him, "What is your name?" He's talking directly to the spirit world. This is historical and biblical evidence of it, isn't it? And we're going to show you historical evidence in just a little while. And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Matter of fact, that's about 2,000. And he kept on entreating him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Demons are, and fallen angels are territorial. They like to stay where they were. They have these territories. If they're in a house, and people, houses are really haunted. There are really haunted houses. Not haunted with ghosts, but they're haunted with demon spirits. They really are. And demons are territorial. They don't want to leave. Are people demon-possessed today? Yes, they are. When somebody dies, those demons stay there where they lived, and they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave. This is spooky stuff, isn't it? Scary stuff, but it's real. Be aware of it. And now there was a herd of swine feeding there on a mountain, and the demons entreated, saying, Send us into the swine so that we may enter them. Demons seek to dwell in human or animal flesh. Now, do animals have volition? Yes. And he gave them permission, and coming out of the unclean spirits, they entered the swine, and the herd of swine rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, 2,000 demons. And there's only one per pig. Pigs got good sense, people. I'm telling you, that's one of the most smartest things that walk upon the face of this earth is the pig. They're smart. They are intelligent. 2,000 of them, they were drowned in the sea. And by the way, the Sea of Galilee was known by the Jewish, by the Talmud as the gate. The bottom of the Sea of Galilee was a gate of Hades or Sheol. That was a gate of Sheol. And now these Jews are sitting back there and looking. Man, he cast them out, and boy, these demons went right straight to the gates of Sheol. That's where they are today. They were drowned in the sea. Each one was drowned in the sea. And their herdsmen ran away and reported it in the city and out in the country, and the people came to see that had happened, and they came to Jesus, observed the man who had been demon-possessed sitting down, clothed in his right mind, and the very man who had the legion, and they became terrified. And those who had seen it described to them how it had happened to the demon-possessed man and all about the swine. And they kept on entreating him to depart from to get out of here. You're ruining our economy. You've taken our economy away from us. Our pigs are gone. We can't sell these pigs to the Romans. The demon-possessed man was entreated him and said that he might accompany him. He wanted to become a member of the church and follow him. And Jesus gave him a job to do. Brother Ray, look at that verse 19 there. And he did not let him, but he said to him, Go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy upon you. And guess what? Here we have 10 churches started by this man, and that's the cities of Decapolis. I've been to those places where those early churches were. There were 10 great churches started in these areas. Guess by this missionary sent out by this first little church here. And he went away and began to proclaim in Decapolis what great thing Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled and believed. And they got baptized and they had churches. This goes all the way. These churches were alive all the way into the Byzantine times. Go on a little bit further. Daniel, the 9th chapter. The book of Daniel. Daniel, the 9th chapter. 9 and verse 20. Now while I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God in behalf of the holy mountain of God, while I was still speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen, who is this Gabriel? He looks like a man, doesn't he? Because all angels look like men. They're all masculine, by the way. There aren't any girl angels. I had seen in a vision previously came and to me in my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offering. And he gave me instruction and talked with me, and he said, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you insight with the understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, and the command was issued, I had come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed, so give heed to the message and gain understanding. Now run over here to the 10th chapter and verse 9. But I heard the sound of the words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a hypnotic trance, hypnose, into a deep sleep, with my face to the ground. Then behold, a hand touched me, and set me trembling upon my hands and knees. And he said to me, O Daniel, man of high esteem, and understand the words that I am about to tell you, and to stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. And he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart and understanding this, on humbling yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia, the prince of the kingdom of darkness. Who is this prince of the kingdom of darkness? This is old Satan himself. Angels have dominions. Angels have territories. Every nation has angels over them. Notwithstanding me for 21 days, then behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to me, for I have been left there with the kings of Persia. Now here he is, over the kings of Persia. Now when Gabriel was sent to Daniel, the kings of Persia, the prince of darkness of Persia, withstood him. He didn't want him to come into his territory deal, into his territory possession. You stay out of here. Stay out of here, Gabriel. This is mine. Oh, Michael. You know, Michael, he comes. Now, we have Michael, and we have Gabriel here. 3 of them. And we have spiritual armies behind them. Now, these angels are tangible. What's tangible mean? That which may be touched, they're physical. They have physical bodies. For I had left there the kings of Persia, and now I've come to you to give you understanding of what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision pertains to those days of the future. And when he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless. Behold, one who resembled a human being was touching my lips. And then I opened my mouth and spoke, and he said to him who was standing before me, O my Lord, as a result of the vision, anguish has come upon me, and I have retained no strength. Are these historical evidence? Do we have historical evidence? Do we have biblical evidence? Do we have physical evidence? Those cities of Decapolis are there. Persia today is Iran. Who is the prince over Iran today? Satan himself. Who is the prince over the nation of Israel, God's only nation? Michael. There we have historical, we have biblical, and we have physical evidence. Now, when Israel went into the land, I'm going to tell you this one more little story. If it wasn't for Hitler, we'd be speaking Russian today. I'm telling you. God allows a lot of things happen in this world. Which is what he calls his permissive will. Hitler rose. And Franklin Roosevelt allowed him to go through Russia and wipe a whole bunch of them out, because Franklin Roosevelt knew in the end Russia was going to be our enemy. And to get many of them killed off as he could before he got in the army, got in the war in World War II. Every nation in Europe had volunteers, the SS Waffen, that's Hitler's Foreign Legion, to help Hitler stop communism. The last ones to defend the fortress of Hitler were the Latvians. They would not die. They would not surrender. They died. They died fighting, protecting Hitler's last bunker. They didn't want to become communist. When we whipped the Germans, what happened? Russia went into Germany there and turned on us and started shooting at us and taking all of the sciences and the scientists and capturing them and taking them to Russia. What forces, what angelic forces are over them? Who is the god of this age? Satan. Where is the kingdom of God today? The direct kingdom of God is in the third heaven. But does he have a kingdom on earth? He has a kingdom in his true New Testament churches. They are administrators of that kingdom. And are we facing the spiritual forces of darkness? Yeah. Every day. Jesus said, Matthew 16 and 18, Thou art Peter, a small stone, but upon this gigantic foundational rock I'll be building my church, and the gates of hell cannot wrestle her down, because the gates of hell would try to do it. Matthew 28:18 through 20, it says, in King James it says, go ye therefore. In the Greek it says, having been dispersed, make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to guard with their lives all things that I've given you, and lo, I'll be with you when? Until the end of this age. The church didn't go out of existence. It's been polluted. True New Testament churches today, 35 years ago when I was preaching, we had at least 5 to 6 hours of church a week, didn't we, Brother Ray? And I preached and I preached and I preached, and that preaching and that foundation that I laid, those people are still, many of them still in God's services today because they had a foundation. Churches today preach one thing, evangelism, and they turn them loose and let the spiritual forces thrash them. We need to teach our people. We need to teach our people to study, to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing, cutting straight the word of truth. So why? So we can stand against the wiles and the methods of Satan. And I guess everybody's gone today, aren't they, Marilyn? Thank you for your attention. Go out and do something eternal, and I'll have our prayer in just a minute. Just hold on.